Plus, that doesn't even include the social life that you're supposed to have
Literally.
in life. Social life. And so you're going through all of these things.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Teaching with Tenia. I am so glad you're here because I have a special guest today.
Hi, my name is Kelly Heischman, or as my students call me, Miss H.
Miss H, and what do you teach?
So I teach middle school and high school history / social studies.
Yeah, she's a history buff.
That's a little bit of an understatement. I'm more of a history fanatic.
But the students love her, and I'm so glad you guys get to experience her on my channel as well. In this video, we are going to be talking about things that you should know before you start student teaching because, congrats to us, we just graduated college.
We did it!
Literally, we're done, and we just completed our student teaching semester, so now we're here to help you guys. So let's get right into the video. Mrs. H is going to start us off with the first thing you should know before you start student teaching.
Alrighty, so my first point that I think is like so important is plan your rest time. And that sounds like such a weird thing to plan your rest time, but I remember back when I was little, we used to have like planned nap time, like when it was 3 o'clock, like it was nap time, and like every day I knew like when it was 3 o'clock it was nap time, and that's when like I had to go down for a nap. As an adult and when you're student teaching, you are constantly like you are working full-time student teaching. If you're working a job outside of student teaching, you're working that. If you play a sport and you're still playing your sport while you're student teaching, you have all of that. Plus, that doesn't even include the social life that you're supposed to have
Literally.
in life. Social life. And so you're going through all of these things and you're running, and your body needs rest. Your body needs time to just take a step back and breathe. And planning that time to just sit and do nothing, or to find something that you enjoy doing that is a stress reliever. I'm a seamstress in my free time, and I do a lot of sewing when I'm stressed out. And so I got a good amount of sewing done when I was student teaching. I also like to bake, and so I did a lot of baking too, because that is a restful activity. Those are restful activities for me to do. And I planned it out. My Sundays are my rest days. I don't do school on Sunday. I don't work on Sundays. I go to church and I hang out with my people that I love. That's where I get my social life in on Sundays. And it's also my time where I sit and I rest and I do nothing. The Bible tells us in Psalm 46:10 to be still and know that I am God. Be still. God tells us to be still, to be calm. Remember who He is. What's going to get you through student teaching is not your own ability, not your own power. It's knowing who God is and knowing that God's going to be there the whole time. And He wants you to rest too. So I'm going to just play that card while I'm at it.
Definitely. Going along with that, making sure that you do get your rest in, because teacher burnout is real and we want to prevent that. Right. But also make sure that your personal life is intact as much as it can be before you start student teaching. So whether you have like family things to handle or other school things to handle outside of student teaching, try to make sure all those things are intact before you student teach, so that you can give all or most of your energy to student teaching, but still allowing that rest time.
I think also going off of that, it's really important to realize that if your life is not all in order, it's okay. You may not be there, and that's okay too. But do your best. My next point is be prepared for everything and anything. They tell you that in your education courses. They're like, be prepared for anything that can happen. Like, when you walk into that classroom your first day, you have to be prepared for anything that could happen. In both of my placements, within 3 days of being there, I was in charge of the entire classroom and all of the subjects. For my first placement, I did not know that was going to be happening. I knew a little bit because my teacher was going to be gone for a week and a half for a vacation, and I was like, oh, I'll teach her sub-plans. Those didn't work out. I ended up having to plan everything myself. My second placement, I knew my teacher really well, like we're really close. So I knew I was taking things over quicker, but it was still being prepared for everything, which I have a prop now. For all of my older generation people, you know who this is. This is Gumby. Gumby was from a very old cartoon. And the fun thing about Gumby is that he's just like really flexible, and he just kind of like moves around whatever he can. He can bend. It's Gumby. And what Gumby is known for is being flexible and being able to just kind of go with the flow of whatever's happening. And as teachers, as much as we need to be prepared for any and everything that's going to happen, you also need to be prepared to be flexible, to say, okay, my lesson plan failed, it's going out the window. Or it's being at school, expecting a full day of school, and 10 minutes before your students get there, you find out that it's going to be an early dismissal, and you only have your kids for 2.5 hours, because that's how elementary schools work sometimes, and you have 3 tests to give or whatever. Actually, I think it was like a spelling test, a quiz, and some other stuff.
Yikes. And
your co-op is not there with you, and you're alone. What are you going to do? It's being prepared, staying calm, and it's in those moments where you're like, okay, God, just need a little bit of patience and keep going. But be flexible, be like Gumby, be prepared.
Definitely. And being prepared could be a kid throws up on himself, or in the hallway. It's like all these different things, or even your lesson plans may not go the way you want to, or your co-op has to step out the room for 2 hours. You just never know. So she actually brought that to our student teaching orientation, and it is a great reminder for me, so I hope that helps you guys as well. So the next thing I want to stress to you guys is, within the first couple of days of your placement, try as best as you can to get your hands on the curriculum, because you may not know what you're teaching or how best to teach it. So getting comfortable with the curriculum, because you never know what questions students are going to ask. But if you know the curriculum as best as you can before you start teaching, that will benefit you a lot.
Yeah. My next point kind of goes off that a little bit. It's also okay to just know the basics. I taught, in my one placement, I taught 7th grade ancient history, specifically medieval Japan. I have never in my life studied medieval Japan. I literally knew nothing. And for that class, there were days where it was like, and I taught off of my co-op's notes. Like, she had all these beautiful PowerPoints already made, and I was going to use the free resources is what it was, because that's what they needed to know. Not that you teach to a test, but it's what they needed to know to be successful in the class, and she'd compiled it, and we had the same teaching philosophy, and so it was an easy transition. But there were days where I would go in and I knew what I was teaching, and it was just the slides that were on that PowerPoint, and that was it. Like, I had no other knowledge, because I knew nothing, literally nothing. And if any of my students had asked a question, I would have been like, that is a really great question, I don't know. But in those moments, it's also a really, really great time to use it as a learning opportunity to say, you know what, I don't know, let's use this time to find the answer. Or if anyone goes home and finds the answer and is willing to share it with the rest of the class, like, you'll get a piece of candy or extra credit points or X, Y, and Z. A gold sticker. Middle schoolers really love gold stickers. But it's okay to not know everything. You're a pre-service teacher, you're student teaching. You're not going to know everything. You're gonna mess up, or you're not going to have the right answer, and that's okay. But it's acknowledging that and trying to do better.
Definitely. I also feel like education's in a shift right now. Like, us as teachers, we don't know all the information.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I want to stress in my next point, is that even your co-op may not know all the information, but like Kelly said, you can learn and try to do better. At the end of the day, your co-op may not have all the information, and I went into student teaching thinking, I'm going to learn from my co-op, she's the best teacher ever. And while in some instances that was the case, like in other instances it was not. And we were learning from each other instead of her just giving me everything she knows about teaching. Instead, we were learning and figuring out our students in the best way to help them in the best way that we can together. And that's what made this experience beautiful, because she didn't know everything, I didn't know everything, but guess what, we put our brains together, and 2 brains are better than 1. That's another scripture. Yep. And we just served our students in the best way possible during that time.
Yeah. Your co-op is not going to know everything. You're not going to know everything. That's just the reality of the situation. Yeah. Which leads into my next point, which is assess, assess, assess. Whether you are using formative assessments, summative assessments, you are assessing student learning, you're assessing your abilities, you're assessing your teacher that you're in the room with. You should always be evaluating and comparing, and I don't want to say testing, because testing's not a great word, but
and some students get anxiety over that word.
Yeah, some students get anxiety over the word test. But you are testing them. You're testing them on a daily basis. You're assessing them. You're saying, okay, we just did the lesson. Where are my students at? Did I successfully teach this lesson to them? Did I meet my objectives? And if you didn't, that's okay. You can try again. There was at least 2 days in my one placement where I bombed the lesson. Things did not work out the way that I wanted to. It failed. But I realized it failed. And I had realized it failed because I was aware of what was going on in my classroom, but I assessed my students and they all looked at me like I had 10 heads. They had no idea. But because I assessed them and I was constantly assessing them, seeing where they were at, the next day I was able to come in and change my lesson plans and say, okay, we're going to reteach what we did yesterday, but I'm going to do it differently so they get it. And that constant assessing is going to help your students. And it doesn't always have to be graded. We are finally changing into this mindset where you don't have to grade everything. And it's okay to just assess just to see. Like, I'm a nosy person. I'm going to assess my students just to see where they're at because I'm curious. And in doing so, you're also assessing yourself. You need to take a step back and say, okay, how did I do today? How did today's lessons go? What could I have done better? And it's also okay to assess the teacher that you're with, because most co-ops, I won't say all, but most co-ops want to see you succeed, but they also want to learn from you. And being able to share my minute amount of knowledge that I have about teaching with my teacher who's been teaching for 10, 20, 30 years was a very beautiful and unique experience because they're still learning. Teachers are lifelong learners. If I ever get to the point where I think that I know everything, like, please call me out and say, no, you don't, because I don't. I always need to be able to take a step back and assess myself, assess my students, assess what's just going on. So remember your assessments, as difficult as they may be to make.
For sure. I think one of our professors used a quote like, the time whenever you stop learning is like where your kids stop learning. So we should be constantly learning as well. As Kelly just talked about assessments, if you haven't checked out my How to Assess Students video and make sure that they're learning, I talk about a bunch of assessments, informal, all that. So be sure to check out that video and I put in the cards above. So my next point that goes along with that is be prepared to have professional conversations, because you and your co-op will be having either good feedback, sorry, her cat's right there. She would be giving you good feedback or bad feedback. By the end of the day, it's constructive criticism. We are new to this learning and teaching relationship, so be prepared to have professional conversations. Sometimes they may be hard because the lesson didn't go as well as you thought they did that day, or even like with your supervisor, constantly asking you what could you have done better, or how did you assess your students, or how you differentiated that day. Just be prepared to have those professional conversations, and sometimes even send an email. I know some people don't know how to do that, and sending professional emails, whether it's to parents or your colleagues, if you have an aide in the classroom, making sure everyone's on the same page. Be prepared to have those professional conversations, even though they may be hard or tough sometimes. Just remember, you're there to serve the students in the best way possible, and you guys are a team. It shouldn't be you against your co-op, but instead, how can you guys work together professionally to serve the students best?
Yeah. And my final point for the day is be ready and okay to fail. You're a student teacher, you're still in school. You're gonna mess up, you're gonna fail, but you are in an environment where it's okay to fail. So learn how to fail safely. If you've ever been to a circus or like Cirque du Soleil or any acrobatic thing like that, and you see all the people and they're swinging back and forth on their ropes, they're not swinging over the ground. They've got a net there. They've got a safety net that protects them if something happens to them. They know that if they fail, they're still going to be okay. You're in the one environment, the one time in your professional career where if you totally bomb and mess up and fail, it's okay, because you can say, I'm not an expert yet. It's okay to fail, it's okay to mess up, but don't sit in that failure. Don't sit there and think to yourself, oh, I'm a terrible teacher because my lesson failed or my students didn't do well. Like, that's okay. I had an assignment that I assigned to my 8th graders. They had to create this timeline of events leading up to the Civil War. And I had 3 students who bombed it. It was just awful. 2 of the students didn't put the effort in. And I decided to give them grace and give them extra time to complete the assessment. And sadly, they did not take that opportunity, and their grade stayed at a very, very bad grade. But I gave them the opportunity. The 3rd student missed the whole goal of the assessment, and that was on me. I knew that this student who struggles in their learning needed that extra support, and I had dropped the ball there. I totally just, with everything that was going on in student teaching and with field trips, and it was a chaotic week leading up to when that assessment was due, when that timeline was due. And I dropped the ball checking in on with the student to make sure that they knew what was going on and that they were progressing well. And the project that they turned in was not even, it was not even close to what it should have been. And I realized that I messed up and I failed, and I will openly admit that. And so I went to that student, and I also gave that student grace to try again. And I went to my co-op and I said, I dropped the ball. Like, I should have followed up with them, made sure that they got it, and I didn't. And so I gave the student a second chance, and they ended up doing a little bit better, and they turned in a better assignment. It still wasn't their best work, but I could see that by me sitting there and helping them get through and explaining stuff a little bit better, they understood the assignment better. I failed, I messed up, but it's okay. No one got hurt, no one died, no one's grade was significantly affected. I was always a grade-focused student. It was okay, it was fine. Learn to fail well, but don't sit in that failure. Pick yourself back up and say, okay, today was a bad day, or that was a bad thing, it didn't go well. Tomorrow will be better. How can I do better? That goes back to the whole assessment point. Learn to fail, but assess your failure so it doesn't happen again. Because if you can learn to fail well now, when you're a student teacher, when you are teaching 15, 20 years down the road and you mess up, you're gonna be like, okay, that failed. It's fine. Okay, let's move on. Let's go on to the next thing and try again. It's gonna help you immensely.
Yes, I love that. The key word she used is grace. Grace for your student, grace for your co-op, grace for everyone involved in your
grace
student teaching.
Grace for yourself. I need grace towards myself.
Yeah, it can be hard to give yourself that grace, but at the end of the day, you need it. We all need it. So just be okay to give yourself that grace. And last but not least, after you have failed many times, probably, I want you to remember student teaching can be a fun experience if you allow it to be. Learning from your mistakes, being able to be in the classroom and have full control for that week or however long your teacher program does it. Be able to have fun with your kids. And once you set that routine and that boundary and that respect level with your students, you can joke around with them a little bit, or even plan an experience that throughout the day or throughout a week that they weren't expecting. Be able to have fun and bring learning to life, because learning can be fun once you have all those boundaries in place with your students. So don't forget to have fun. And is there anything else you want them to know?
No, I would just reiterate that have fun. The hardest classes you will ever teach are the classes who don't know how to have fun. And those classes, ironically, are my favorite because it builds a challenge of how can I make this concept of totalitarianism fun for my students? And then when you do it and you make it enjoyable and you make it fun, those students come up to you and you're like, I've never enjoyed history, or I've never enjoyed this, and now I love it because of you. And that's, not why I'm becoming a teacher, but it's getting to see that mindset change of being like, oh, maybe learning isn't as terrible. Maybe it can be fun. Because that's why we became teachers. I love teaching. I think it's so fun. There are very other few things in my life that give me as much joy as when I teach in the classroom. When I make my 10th graders do circle time with me because I was in a mood and I needed to sit on the ground, or when I go camping with my 8th graders in Gettysburg to teaching fractions with trees and lumberjacks. Like, make it fun, make it exciting, enjoy this time, journal it, write it down, do a video vlog. Remember this time and enjoy it. Don't let it speed past you, because trust me, it will. Some days feel like they last for 10 years, and then all of a sudden you're walking across the stage at graduation and you're like, where did all the time go?
Crazy, crazy. Thank you so much, Kelly, for imparting wisdom on my channel. And as you can tell, our educator hearts are very similar. But thank you guys so much for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe down below and comment what was your favorite thing that we said. And peace.